What? Hey, oh, hello. Hey, my name is Nick Digilio. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. I hope you're checking me out on Patreon as well, where you can donate some dough. That'd be really cool if you did it. I do a bunch of videos, I do a bunch of podcasts, I do a bunch of radio appearances. You can hear me streaming live at radiomisfits.live twice a day. The Nick D podcast every morning at 9 a.m. streaming live. You can listen to it. And the Saturday Night Live podcast I do, that show hasn't been funny in years, at 9 a.m. every day at radiomisfits.live. Radiomisfits.com is where you can find those two podcasts, and you can search everywhere. It's on Spotify, it's on Amazon, it's on Apple, every single platform where they have podcasts. You can hear my two podcasts from Radio Misfits, the Nick D podcast, and that show hasn't been funny in years. You can also hear me every Friday, sometimes every other Friday. I'm a regular contributor to the Steve Cochran Show on WLS AM 890, the big 890 89 on AM Chicago Radio WLS. So all that stuff that I do in these videos and all the other stuff that I do on social media, it's all free. I review movies, I entertain, I tell stories, have guests. All that stuff is free. So if you go to patreon.com/NickDShow, pick a tier and donate some money, I will be forever grateful, and you will in turn suddenly be very cool. So patreon.com/NickDShow, donate today. Okay, it's a big movie week this weekend. June, what the hell is it? June 30th, this Friday. The latest in the Indiana Jones saga is released. It's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I saw it last week, so I've seen it, I saw it way ahead of time. I've seen it over a week, but about a week ago, more than a week ago. I've seen it like 10 days ago or whatever. And it comes out this Friday. So I thought I would give you a quick review of the latest Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny, the newest one, and tell you what I think of the series as a whole, and the character and the concept, and its the character and how that character has been a part of movies and television and pop culture since the original movie came out. All right, so I will get to the latest movie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, in a moment. Anyway, so Indiana Jones is a character that was created by George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. They loved the old Saturday morning movie serials that you would go and see, the cliffhanger serials where they would have these adventures, and each week you would go and see this. You would see a newsreel, or you'd see a couple of cartoons before you'd see a movie at the big old movie palaces back in the day when you would go and watch movies all day and sit in the theater. And part of the fun of going to movies when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were kids, and when people were even of an older generation, were these cliffhanger serials that they would do. And everybody knows that that's what inspired Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was the first of the Indiana Jones series. Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1981. It was Spielberg's follow-up to his only massive flop, well, at that time, his only massive flop, and one of his best movies ever, 1941. So he had done Jaws, Close Encounters, and then 1941, and then he kind of needed a hit to bounce back from 1941, which was historically considered one of the biggest bombs that he's ever had. Not just him, but anybody has ever had. It was a massive Hollywood bomb where they spent millions and millions of dollars. Spielberg went way over budget and didn't care because he was coming off of Jaws and Close Encounters, so he could basically do whatever he wanted. And he did. And he made a great movie. You know why? Because Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale wrote it. But anyway, so his next movie needed to be a hit, and it was a huge hit. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the very first Indiana Jones thing, came out in 1981, summer of 1981. I was 16 when it came out, and I thought it was terrific. I had a great time watching it. It was a big hit in 1981. And I thought it was fun. I thought it was great. I, however, am not one of these people who went apeshit over it. I am not one of these people who think it's one of the greatest adventure movies ever made, and it's incredible action. I think there's a lot of great stuff in it. I think Harrison Ford is having a great time in it. Karen Allen, who I think is extraordinary, and for my money, the best part of the entire fucking series, actually. And there are a lot of really great action sequences that are really beautifully put together, and some incredible stunt work, incredible car chases, beautifully choreographed stuff. It's a terrific movie, there's no question about it. And then in 1984, he did the sequel, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And for my money, it is actively better than the first one. I think it's darker, I think it's meaner, I think there's more at stake. I think the action sequences are much better choreographed, much more imaginative, crazier, the stakes are bigger, the stunts are crazier. Well, Karen Allen's not in it, and Kate Capshaw is, and that's because Spielberg was sleeping with her, and that's why she's in it. And a lot of people pointedly say, you know what, she's not good, and trying to replace Karen Allen with anybody is a problem, but replacing her with a screaming, annoying, crying, yelling Kate Capshaw is not good. And to a certain extent, I agree with that. But the movie itself is a much better movie than Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like I said, it's darker. For Indiana Jones, there's a much more interesting arc and challenge to him. He smacks kids around. There's hearts being torn out that are still beating. There are incredible action sequences that are much better paced, much better put together. Everything about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is better than Raiders, and Raiders is a really good movie, a very, very, very good movie. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is actually a terrific movie, a much better movie, and I really enjoyed it. I was like, wow, it's better than Raiders, but the reaction was not good. It was, most people are like, it's not as good as Raiders, it's fine, everybody likes it, but it's still not as good as Raiders. And the argument that I've gotten into, everybody brings up Karen Allen, and that's a really good point. It's a really good point. It does suffer a little bit because of Kate Capshaw, but it's a much better movie. It is. Sorry, it is. And then, a few years later, in 1989, he made Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, by this point, I had kind of grown tired of it, and I didn't care anymore. I was like, all right, whatever. And they bring in Sean Connery, and it was supposed to be like, oh, here you've got this, younger generation Harrison Ford, who's playing this iconic character in a series of movies that everybody loves. Let's bring in Sean Connery, who was having like an incredible resurgence in popularity. He had just won an Oscar for The Untouchables, and they thought it would be great stunt casting to have Sean Connery, James Bond, playing Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones' father, and they put him together in yet another Nazi-generated mystery, and I didn't give a fuck about it at all. I thought it was boring. Alison Doody was the lead in that, and for all the people who bitched about Kate Capshaw, I have this to say. Alison Doody, her last name is appropriate for her performance in that movie. It became bigger and crazier and much less interesting and much less dark. There wasn't nearly as much at stake, and it did not have the balls and the darkness and the edge that Temple of Doom had. And in fact, it feels like Spielberg's like, I'm really sorry I got ballsy and dark. I'll go back to my E.T. stuff. And it felt like an apology for Temple of Doom. It felt like Spielberg was apologizing for making a better movie than Raiders. So I was like, yeah, there you go. So I did not like your little Last Crusade. And I tried to watch it. Eric Childress, by the way, was a friend of mine, huge Spielberg fan. He's his favorite director of all time. Let's not get into it. But he loves Last Crusade. Well, he loves them all. This guy, he likes the fucking Skull. He liked the new one. So, but he's like, no, you should go. Because I hadn't watched Last Crusade since probably it came out. So 30 years. And we were at movie trivia, and it was playing in the music box on the little TV on the VHS thing. And I'm like, man, I haven't seen this movie in years. And I was questioning stuff that was happening because I didn't remember it. He's like, you should go back and watch it. You'll reconsider it. I got an hour in. I rewatched it like a week ago, like after I saw or right before I saw Dial of Destiny. Yeah, it was like 2 nights before I saw Dial of Destiny. I thought, okay, I'll watch I couldn't get through it. After an hour, I was like, yeah, fuck off. It's not good. So Last Crusade, that was in 89. And then in 08, all after years, they decided to go back. Spielberg's going to come back, and he's going to make a new generation, and he's going to hand off the baton to a young star who happened to be Shia LaBeouf. And this was like right before his career derailed, and he went lunatic and all kinds of stuff. And Shia LaBeouf, to his credit, I loved the little LaBeouf, and I still like him. I still think he's nuts. He's done some questionable shit, but I like his work, and I thought he was an interesting dude. But that didn't work out because he's Shia LaBeouf. But they were going to make this final movie with Harrison Ford and then hopefully hand the baton off to Shia LaBeouf, and LaBeouf was going to continue. And he had made the goddamn Transformers movies, I think, at that point, and they thought, okay, everybody loves this kid. Let's make him the new Indiana Jones. And so they made Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Cate Blanchett is the only good thing in it. She plays the villain. They bring Karen Allen back. To no avail. And it is laughably, it's considered probably the worst of the series. And it's got like CGI, a whole bunch of bad CGI, and like really bad special effects and weird animation. And it's got, him being in a refrigerator during a nuclear explosion, but the fridge is like atomic zone free or whatever. Everybody talks about the nuked fridge scene, and that's the least of that movie's problems. The monkeys are a bigger problem than the everybody talks about the nuked refrigerator scene as being the most embarrassing part of that movie. There are many, 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 many more embarrassing things in that movie. In fact, the Crystal Skull is a piece of shit. I remember my friends and I were kind of excited. We went to see it, and afterwards we went right down the street to the bar and we got loaded afterwards, talking about how much of a hunk of shit it was. And my friends, by the way, much bigger Indiana Jones fans than I am. Like, they went through Last Crusade. They like Last Crusade. So I was with people who were big, big fans of the series, and they were even pissed. So now here we are, 2023. Harrison Ford's like in his 80s, and Steven Spielberg didn't come back for this one. The director is James Mangold, who is a terrific director, who has made some great movies, including Copland. He did a great remake to 3:10 to Yuma. Logan, the best comic book movie ever made, was directed by James Mangold. He did a terrific horror thriller called Identity. He's done some great. Walk the Line was James Mangold. He's a solid director. He can do really great work, and he was hired to come in, and they hired Jez Butterworth and David Koepp, who has written like a ton of movies for Spielberg, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is also in the movie. You know her from Fleabag, and she did a polish on the script as well. So they brought in a bunch of screenwriters to bring it back and somehow justify the fact that they're going to make a goddamn Indiana Jones movie in 2023. And the result is shit. So, Raiders of the Lost Ark I like. Very good movie. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom I love. Great movie. Don't like Last Crusade? It sucks. Don't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? It sucks. And I don't like Dial of Destiny. And the opening of this movie, it takes place, and this is like, if you're going to watch them in chronological order, I guess this is the way you're supposed to do it. That little young Indiana Jones fucking Chronicles TV series bullshit, I guess that took place between 1908 and 1920. So that's the timeline. And then Temple of Doom takes place in 1935. So the second movie is a prequel to Raiders. Then Raiders takes place in 36. Last Crusade with Sean Connery takes place in 1938. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull takes place in 1957. And most of Dial of Destiny, the new one, takes place in 1969. So that's your chronological order. If you want to watch these things in chronological order, I don't know why you want to put yourself through that fucking torture. But if you wanted to, you go Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, Temple of Doom, Raiders, Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny. And the reason I say most of Dial of Destiny takes place in 1969 is because it opens with an extended action scene that is a flashback to 1939. So the flashback takes place after Last Crusade, if you can keep that in track. Okay? So the flashback at the beginning of Dial of Destiny takes place after Crusade, but before the skulls, the crystal skulls. All right? So anyway, and at the beginning of the movie, it is young, CGI'd Indiana Jones. So Harrison Ford is CGI'd, deep-faked into looking like he's 30, even though he's 80. And Mads Mikkelsen, who plays the villain in this movie, is also deep-faked and CGI'd, so he looks like a fucking cartoon character. So they're young. So they are young Indiana Jones and young villain. And there's this Dial of Destiny, and he and Toby Jones, who plays his assistant in this movie, they were after the Dial of Destiny, and the big action sequence takes place on a train, and there's Nazis, and it's the end of the war, and blah blah blah. So, it's the end of the war. So it's not 1939. No, it would be the beginning takes place in 45. So the beginning of this movie takes place then. So anyway, beginning of the movie, it's the end of the war, and the Nazis. One guy in particular blames Hitler for losing the war, and he wants to kill Hitler. And like, if Hitler hadn't been in charge, the Germans would have won World War II. That's what this guy is thinking. So you have this big opening sequence that's establishing this Dial of Destiny thing that everybody wants, the Nazis want, Indiana Jones wants, because he and his partner want to put it in a museum, and then it gets split in half. There's one half of the Dial of Destiny thing, and there's another half. And then at the beginning, the whole setup is, here's this Dial of Destiny that Indiana Jones wanted to get in the 40s, and now we're cutting to 1969, some 20-some years later, and he's old, he's Indiana old, and like people are playing the Beatles really loud next to him, and there's hippies and all kinds of shit happening, and you dive right into 1969, and then it's old Indiana Jones who gets sucked into an adventure to find the other half of the Dial of Destiny by the daughter of Toby Jones, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She plays Helena. the daughter, his goddaughter, who is also Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones' goddaughter. They team up to find the other half of the Dial of Destiny, and even though it takes place in 1969, they still have to have Nazis as the bad guy. And there are some old Nazis, old German guys that want this, and it's him traveling all over the world to find the second half of the Dial of Destiny. And the Dial of Destiny has these powers where you can go back in time and change time, and Mads Mikkelsen wants to go back in time and kill Hitler, even though he's a Nazi, so that the Germans win the war. So that's the plot. It's yet another uninspired, Nazis? The movie takes place in 69 and yet Nazis are still the villain. So there's no inspiration here. They bring in Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who basically is just doing her Fleabag thing. I was surprised that she wasn't looking into the camera and winking and doing her wacky Fleabag winky shit. She doesn't do that. She's annoying. And Harrison Ford clearly doesn't want to be there. Harrison Ford hasn't wanted to be in a movie in fucking forever. I'm trying to think of some of the movies that he's actually had fun in recently, which are none. He's great in Blade Runner, in the sequel to Blade Runner. He's great in that, but he should be grumpy and old in that because that makes sense. And he's a replicant. But anyway. So Harrison Ford is walking around, and all of the action sequences are done with an incredible amount of really poorly executed CGI. And the first 15 minutes of the movie, the big flashback action scene on the train, may as well be a goddamn cartoon. It's so fake and so takes you out of it. And all the action sequences in this movie, most of them take place at dark. They are overrun by overwhelming CGI effects because Harrison Ford is 80 and Mads Mikkelsen is 70s. And so adding all these special effects, there are car chases. There are a couple of well-executed mini car chases, like with scooters flying around in an old village. That's an okay sequence, but for the most part, the action sequences are really lame. They're terribly executed. They are filled with horrible special effects and CGI in order to make an 80-year-old guy look like he can run around down the streets. And they're unimaginative. They're derivative of every other Indiana Jones movie and every other goddamn adventure movie you've ever seen. There's nothing original about the movie. There's no original take about it. It is torture to sit through. And because Disney now owns all this shit, and Marvel is part of the Disney world and all that shit, now apparently it's a prerequisite that you must include some stupid-ass time travel multiverse element in every adventure or action movie that you make nowadays. I guess that's a law. I guess Disney and all these idiots at Marvel have decided, well, in order to make a big adventure special effects blockbuster, comic book action adventure movie, you've got to include really fucking stupid time travel. And when the stupid time travel comes into play in this movie, and trust me, it is really fucking stupid and absurdly ridiculous time travel. The last 45 minutes of this movie, of Indiana Jones and the Dial, is laughably awful. Like batshit crazy, but not in a good way, just like derivative stupid. We must do multiverse time travel stuff because that's what everybody wants in 2023. Bullshit. Desperate bullshit. So, I didn't care about anything that was happening. I've stopped caring about Indiana Jones' adventures in 1984 after the best movie, Temple of Doom, came out. And since then, it's all been downhill rapidly. From Last Crusade, which was a bunch of shit, to the Monkey movie, which was actually even worse than this one, if that's possible. And then to this piece of crap. James Mangold, there's none of his personality is in this movie. He's a terrific filmmaker, a very distinctive and great voice, and a great technical filmmaker. And none of that talent is visible here. It's James Mangold doing a really poor impression of Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg doing impression of Steven Spielberg is really derivative and unimpressive in the first place. So to have a really great filmmaker imitating a filmmaker who is spotty at best is pretty fucking annoying and pretty disappointing. So the fact that James Mangold, who's a great director, his personality and style and talent is nowhere to be found in this overly, ridiculously complicated, CGI-laden, terribly written, badly executed action movie, where his personality is gone and the only thing that exists is him desperately trying to, for some reason, repeat Steven Spielberg's style. Harrison Ford is uninterested. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is completely annoying. The only things about this movie are, I'm not going to give it away, I think everybody knows, but I'm not going to give it away. A certain character and performer comes back for the last 5 minutes of this movie. It's the best part of the movie. The only good thing I can say about this movie is that the last 5 minutes don't completely suck ass. The rest of it does. So the last 5 minutes, I enjoyed the hell out of the last 5 minutes. It was great. The rest of it is shit. Mads Mikkelsen is wasted, and completely wasted in this movie. John Rhys Davies shows up as Sala. He's been in a bunch of them. He just shows up and says a few lines, and you're supposed to go, oh, look, it's the guy from the original movie. It's Sala. Toby Jones is wasted. You want to talk about wasted? Antonio Banderas is in this movie. One of the most charismatic, one of the best, one of the most talented actors in the world, and a guy who can do action, a guy who can do adventure, a guy who can do comedy, a guy who's got so much talent. He shows up in this movie, and they set up this one big scene, and he's gone after like 10 minutes. He's barely in the movie. You've got one of the greatest, most charismatic actors who can do the style that you are doing, and you have him in the movie for 5 fucking minutes, and he's gone. The biggest waste of a great actor, Antonio Banderas, completely wasted in this movie, and also wasted in this film, but she's the best part of the movie as far as I'm concerned, is Shawnette Renee Wilson. Shawnette Renee Wilson, who is terrific in the Black Panther films. She's fantastic, and she's the best part of this movie. She plays kind of like she's actually a member of the Black Panther Party in the 1969 portion of the movie. She plays like a CIA operative who's undercover, and she's the best part of the entire movie. So bad CGI effects to make Harrison Ford look young. All of the action sequences in the movie look like they may have well been animated. And it just made me think of the first two movies, because you look back at the first two movies, all of the action sequences are all practical. There are real cars. There are real stuntmen. They are climbing underneath cars. They are climbing on top of tanks. They are on top of helicopters and planes. Real stuntmen with real vehicles in real situations. Not CGI, not animated, not this bullshit that we see in all of these movies now. And it's not like you can't do a great action movie with practical effects and CGI combined, because you can. All you got to do is look at the last couple of Mission Impossible movies, and all you got to do is look at John Wick. The John Wick movie that came out this year, practical cars are used in that, mixed with CGI, and all you got to do is look fucking Mad Max Fury Road, which used a little bit of CGI here and there, but mostly practical cars, real stuntmen doing real stunts. This movie, just like all the Marvel movies and all these other bullshit fake action movies, it's all CGI, animated, bad special effects. It just makes you think. You look back at some of the action scenes in Temple of Doom and some of the action scenes in Raiders, and you're like, man, remember when real people with real vehicles would do real stunts in real movies? Not animated, younger versions of CGI'd Harrison Ford that aren't real. They're little animated cartoons jumping off of down of cartoon trains. We're supposed to give a shit about this? And yet you can still make good action movies nowadays. Again, John Wick, Mission Impossible, those are great movies. Fury Road, it's still possible in this day and age with all the CGI effects where you can still do great, effective, amazing action sequences with actual people and actual practical stunts and cars. This movie steers right into and dives head deep into CGI, fake, it may as well be a cartoon, terrible action sequences. So the action sequences are terrible. The story is ridiculous. It's derivative. The Nazis are the bad guys. They've done that 87 times in these movies. Harrison Ford doesn't give a shit. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is annoying as fuck. And two really terrific actors are wasted in this movie. And then the best part of the movie, who I won't reveal, someone shows up in the last 5 minutes, and that's the only good part of the movie. The only other good part of the movie is John Williams' score. He actually provides a terrific score. In addition to the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun callback theme that we hear, he does a really beautiful job with a lush, full score. So John Williams' score, a cameo by somebody in the last 5 minutes, and that's it. And that's it. And I've been done with these movies since 1984. And at this point, I'm saying this now, the majority of Indiana Jones movies suck. There have been 5. 3 of them suck. That's it. So, I don't know how the hardcore fans, I know there are some people who really love it. There are like Eric Childress, who's my friend, and I love him. But he loves almost anything that Spielberg does, and he loves anything with Indiana Jones and all that stuff. So there are going to be a chunk of people who love these movies, who are hardcore fans, who are probably going to be happy with this. My guess is most people are going to go, what the fuck? And have the same response to this movie that they did to the Monkey movie with LaBeouf from 2008. So it's a terrible movie. In fact, I think one of the worst I've seen all year, and a horrible waste of money, and a terrible waste of a terrific director named James Mangold. So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, your little time travel, horseshit, multiverse, CGI, fake nonsense, waste of time. And now, officially, the majority of Indiana Jones movies suck. Sorry.